the right to protest is basically one of the rights that was seen as one of the fundamental rights gained from the 2011 revolution. And it's now, most Egyptians now feel that this right has been trampled on. Ahmed Mahar, the leader of the April 6 movement, said that they're going to march today and see whether, the cops can and the government could actually stop these protests.
Now, the interim president hoped the law will stop protests in Egypt, but because there's been a number of protests. How's your view on this one?
We need to know that there's no political space. Mohamed Morsi was deposed in a coup, and a vast amount of Egyptians actually disagree with the coup, disagree with the ouster of Mohamed Morsi, and the continued arrests and exclusion of them from the political process means that the only other avenue for them to take out these or to show the opposition is through protests.
But isn't there constitutional processes that can allow for their grievances to be heard?
Unfortunately, if you look at the constitution drafting process at the moment, we see basically, a party that won 47% of the first election, that won 25%, of the votes in the presidential election, only has one member on the constitutional panel committee. So we can see that there's, an attempt to undermine, the Islamists in general in Egypt, and so it does. From a legal and a moral perspective, it's highly contentious.
How will this affect movement around the region, you think?
It would not necessarily affect general movement, but it would definitely affect, like if you're a 10-member group or 12-member group walking around, it could be seen as protests. Mm-hmm. And, you could just be arrested for spontaneous protests. And this is similar to what was in the Mubarak regime, where more than 7 people gathering at a certain place would have to then get a permit to protest.
So do you foresee more violent protests from this law?
The protest, the laws are very ambiguous. They allow for the police to use violence to curb not just what they define as self-defense, but also to protect, quote, financial interests, unquote. And so if these protests are going to go ahead, whether the law is existent or not. The question is, and usually the police have not held back on using violence to curb these protests. And we will then see more deaths, more violence, more instability.
So where does this now, in general, leave Egyptians that is unhappy about certain laws?
It's unfortunate. It looks like we now see a full-scale counter-revolution, in the policies. It's probably more repressive now than during the Mubarak regime.
And so says Ebrahim Deen, a researcher at the Afro Middle East Centre. Thank you so much for your time. Right now, that's where we got to leave it. That's your news for now. Coming up next is your weather forecast with Philip Hall.